The truth most men never want to face is this: the harder you try to become perfect, the more impossible it becomes for anyone to actually feel you. I've been there, waking up every morning with the same quiet pressure sitting on my chest, telling myself today I'd be better, sharper, more controlled, more put together. I'd watch my words before I spoke them, adjust my posture before I walked into a room, fix flaws no one ever asked me to fix. In my head, it all made sense. Once I reached a certain level, someone would finally see me clearly and decide I was worth staying for. But the strange part was this: the more I improved, the less connected I felt. Like I was performing on a stage with no audience, saying all the right lines to an empty room. Somewhere along the way, I swallowed a lie without even questioning it. The lie that love is a reward, that if you optimize yourself enough, someone will eventually pick you. So I worked on everything: my body, my discipline, my money, my emotional control. I thought refinement would make me magnetic. What no one warned me about was the cost. Perfection doesn't create closeness. It creates a distance. It turns you into a mask, and masks don't breathe. They don't feel. They don't let anyone in. People don't fall in love with how polished you are. They fall in love with presence, with awareness, with a man who is actually there instead of lost in his own head, correcting himself in real time. Love isn't triggered by how flawless you look. It's triggered by how awake you are. And once you see that, you start to realize something unsettling. Maybe the problem was never that you weren't good enough. Maybe you were just asleep while trying to be perfect. Part 1: The trap of polishing yourself away. Once you accept that perfection never brought you closer to love, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. I remember noticing how often I edited myself in real time, measuring every word before it left my mouth, adjusting my tone depending on who was listening. I wasn't expressing anymore. I was calculating. Life stopped being something I moved through naturally and became something I managed, like I was responsible for maintaining an image instead of simply being present. At first, it feels like maturity, control, discipline. Somewhere along the way, you learned that raw reactions were dangerous and polish was safe. So you built armor, you sharpened it, you kept it clean. From the outside, it looked solid, impressive even. But inside, something started tightening. You could feel it in your chest, in your jaw, in the way your body never fully relaxed around other people. The real cost shows up quietly. You lose touch with your instincts. You stop trusting what your body tells you in the moment. Attraction gets overridden. Curiosity gets muted. Irritation gets swallowed. Not because those feelings are wrong, but because they don't fit the version of yourself you're trying to protect. You become smooth and controlled, but distant. Present, but not felt. And the irony cuts deep. The very traits you believe make you desirable are the ones that make you unreachable. Perfection isn't confidence, it's defense. It's a way to avoid rejection by never fully showing up. But anything built to never crack also never lets warmth through. No friction, no charge, no emotional gravity. People don't connect to refinement. They connect to aliveness. And when you hide behind perfection, you don't become safer. You slowly disappear. Part 2: What it means to be awake. When you stop hiding behind perfection, something uncomfortable but honest comes back online. Reality. Being awake doesn't mean you suddenly feel confident or smooth. It means you notice what's actually happening inside you instead of overriding it. I remember the first time I caught myself feeling tension in my chest before speaking and didn't rush to fix it. I just noticed it. That alone changed the moment more than any polished sentence ever did. An awake man isn't rehearsing the moment while standing inside it. He isn't running lines in his head or tracking how he's being judged. He's paying attention to what's real. Fear shows up and he doesn't panic. Desire shows up and he doesn't chase. He feels uncertainty without trying to erase it. That awareness pulls you out of your head and drops you into the present, where connection either happens or it doesn't. And that uncertainty is what makes the moment alive. The perfect man feels safe because he's predictable. His reactions are clean. His edges are sanded down. You always know what you're getting. But predictability kills polarity. There's no tension, no contrast, no charge. Awareness is different. It grounds you. Not chaotic, not erratic, just solid. You know what's moving inside you, so it doesn't leak out sideways. You don't need to control the moment because you're contained within yourself. This is the part most men miss. Real safety doesn't come from perfection. Perfection feels brittle, like something that might crack under pressure. Safety comes from self-awareness, from a man who knows what he's carrying and isn't afraid of it. A man who can sit with discomfort without fleeing, who doesn't need to pretend everything is light because he's not terrified of the dark. That's containment. That's grounding. When you're aware, your flaws stop being liabilities. They become integrated. An unconscious flaw feels dangerous because it acts on its own. A conscious shadow feels controlled, even if it's intense. That's why awareness is more powerful than perfection. It doesn't hide your inner world. It gives it shape. And a man who knows exactly what he's holding is calmer than a man pretending he's empty. Part 3. When self-improvement becomes a bargain for love. At some point, if you're honest with yourself, you realize a hard truth. A lot of what you called self-improvement was never really about growth. It was about permission. Permission to be wanted. Permission to be chosen. I remember telling myself I was building discipline and value, but underneath that language was a quieter hope. Maybe if I become enough, someone will finally stay. And the moment improvement turns into a bargaining chip, it stops being strength and starts being negotiation. That's where polarity quietly collapses. When your actions are driven by the hope of being chosen, your center shifts outward. You start leaning into moments instead of standing inside them. You wait for reactions. You check for approval. You adjust yourself to keep interest alive. You might look calm on the surface, but your nervous system is reaching forward, asking instead of offering. And that reach is felt immediately, even if nothing obvious is said. You can hide neediness behind ambition, discipline, even silence. But you can't hide the direction of your attention. When you're chasing validation, your energy leaks outward. You rush timing. You over-explain. You invest too early. Not because you're weak, but because you're hoping the moment will confirm your worth. And the cruel part is this: the more you seek permission to be chosen, the less grounded you become. Awareness changes the entire dynamic. When you notice the desire to be accepted instead of obeying it, something settles. You stop upgrading yourself for applause and start watching what's happening inside you. Attraction is still there, but you're no longer enslaved by it. You feel uncertainty without collapsing, desire without clinging. Your center of gravity returns to you. That's real power. Not control over others, but containment within yourself. The man who watches himself can't be easily manipulated by fear of rejection or promises of validation. He's no longer negotiating his worth in real time. And when that negotiation ends, something unexpected happens. You stop trying to be chosen. And that's when choice finally becomes possible. Part 4. When the performance finally drops. At some point, without you forcing it, the performance starts to fall apart. Not because you decided to be confident, but because you got tired of managing yourself. I remember the moment clearly. I wasn't trying to impress anymore. I wasn't scanning for the right move or rehearsing what came next. I just stopped pushing. And in that pause, something simple but unfamiliar happened. I breathed. Not controlled, not deliberate. Just real breathing. My shoulders dropped. My jaw loosened. My attention left my head and landed in the space between me and the moment. That's when things begin to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. Eye contact slows down and holds a little longer. The energy in the room softens instead of staying sharp. The interaction stops feeling like something that needs to be managed and starts feeling like something shared. Nothing obvious changes, yet everything feels different. This is the part most men miss, because they're still trying to do something. But at this stage, attraction isn't created by effort. It's revealed by presence. When you're aware, you become readable. Your reactions line up with what's actually happening inside you. You don't smile to cover uncertainty. You don't speak just to fill silence. You don't push energy forward to get a response. And because you're not hiding, the other person doesn't have to guess. Readability creates trust faster than charm ever could. The nervous system relaxes around clarity. This is where most men finally understand something they'd been getting wrong for years. Attraction doesn't come from saying the right thing at the right time. It happens in the quiet spaces, in the pauses where nothing is forced. When you stop trying to be chosen, your presence stops negotiating. You're no longer performing for a result. You're simply there. And that presence carries a weight that can't be manufactured. Part 5. When imperfection becomes ground instead of a threat. Once presence replaces performance, imperfection stops feeling like something you need to hide. I remember thinking for years that my flaws were the reason things fell apart, so I tried to either clean them up completely or bury them deep enough that no one would ever see them. Both moves came from the same place. I believed weakness itself was dangerous. What I didn't understand yet was that the real danger was being unaware of it. An unconscious flaw has a way of running the room without asking permission. It shows up sideways, through defensiveness, overcompensation, quiet resentment, or sudden withdrawal. You don't see it happening, so you can't contain it. But when you become aware of your impatience, your insecurity, your intensity, the edge comes off. Not because it disappears, but because you're holding it instead of it holding you. Awareness gives shape to what used to spill everywhere. This is where real masculine ground is built, not by denying weakness, and not by drowning in it, but by staying upright while it's there. Holding discomfort without turning it into a story or an apology takes strength. You feel what's moving through you without needing to explain it away or perform around it. That's integration. And integrated men don't need to prove themselves because nothing inside them is fighting for the right to exist. Calm doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from coherence. When your inner experience matches your outer behavior, the tension drops. You stop correcting yourself mid-sentence. You stop bracing for judgment. You stop apologizing for taking up space. Most men are exhausted not because life is heavy, but because they're constantly suppressing parts of themselves they think aren't allowed. That suppression creates anxiety, and anxiety kills attraction faster than any visible flaw ever could. When you own your imperfection, your presence settles. You speak when there's something to say, and stay silent when there isn't. You hold eye contact without trying to dominate or impress. You're not asking anyone to rescue you from yourself. You're already standing. And that solidity is felt immediately, not as arrogance, but as trustworthiness. A man who can hold his own imperfection doesn't need permission to exist. Part 6. Why it was never about your value. Here's the realization that hit me the hardest, and I know it's one most men avoid for years. You were never rejected because you weren't good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not successful enough. She didn't walk away because you lacked value. She walked away because she couldn't feel you. And once that lands, it rearranges everything you thought you understood. Think back honestly. The moments that fell apart weren't dramatic failures. They were quiet, flat. Conversations that were fine but empty. Relationships where nothing was technically wrong, yet something was missing. You showed up on time. You did the right things. You said the correct words. But underneath it all, you were filtered, guarded, managing yourself instead of inhabiting yourself. Not because you didn't care, but because you trained yourself to hide anything that felt risky. And what can't be felt, can't be bonded with. This is the lie that keeps men stuck the longest. If I had been better, she would have stayed. But better at what? More controlled? More agreeable? More impressive? That path never ends, because attraction doesn't respond to improvement the way resumes do. It responds to signal. And signal comes from awareness, from being emotionally present, moment to moment, instead of performing stability while feeling disconnected inside. Awareness is rarer than success. Presence is rarer than beauty. The world is full of disciplined, accomplished, impressive men. Very few are awake. Very few can sit inside a moment without escaping into control or performance. And because it's rare, it carries weight. When that signal fades, people call it losing the spark. But what really disappeared was contact. Not value. Contact. This is why chasing validation never works. You can't be felt while asking to be approved. You can't transmit presence while negotiating your worth. The nervous system doesn't respond to credentials. It responds to coherence, to a man whose inner world and outer behavior match. And once you see that, self-blame starts to loosen its grip because you realize the problem was never that you weren't enough. It was that you weren't fully there. Part 7. Why being awake changes everything. At the end of all this, what you're left with is something almost uncomfortable in its simplicity. You don't need another upgrade. You don't need more discipline, more charm, more control, or more proof that you're worthy. I know, because I chased that road for a long time. It made me sharper on the outside and quieter on the inside. Stronger in appearance, but more disconnected from myself with every step. What actually changed things wasn't fixing myself. It was noticing myself. Noticing when my body tightened instead of forcing it to relax. Noticing fear instead of pretending it wasn't there. Noticing the moment I slipped into performance and called it confidence. Awareness didn't arrive as some dramatic breakthrough. It showed up quietly, the moment I stopped trying to escape who I was in real time. Being awake doesn't make you careless or passive. It makes you conscious. You inhabit your reactions instead of suppressing them. You feel what's happening before you decide what to do about it. And that alone brings coherence. The split between who you are and who you're trying to be starts to close. That's what people feel when they say, a man has presence. Not mystery, not dominance, alignment. You were never meant to be flawless. Flawlessness is static. It doesn't breathe, it doesn't adapt, it doesn't connect. You were meant to be conscious. Conscious of your tension, your desire, your hesitation, your edge. Conscious of the moment unfolding instead of the image you're projecting. A conscious man doesn't rush intimacy, and he doesn't avoid it either. He meets what's real as it is. When you stop fixing yourself, something unexpected happens. You become heavier in the room, not louder, not aggressive, heavier. Your attention slows. Your movements become deliberate. You listen without waiting to speak. You respond instead of react. And people feel that weight because it comes from being grounded in yourself, not from trying to impress anyone else. Most men keep asking how to be loved. The shift happens when you learn how to be felt. Love doesn't arrive through effort. It arrives through contact. And contact only happens when you're present enough to be touched by the moment yourself. The man who is awake doesn't beg to be loved. He doesn't negotiate his worth. He allows himself to be felt, fully, imperfectly, consciously. And that changes everything. If you've stayed with me this far, then something in you already knows the truth. Not as an idea, not as motivation, but as recognition. You've felt what it's like to be sharp on the outside and distant on the inside. You've felt the exhaustion that comes from constantly managing yourself, correcting yourself, trying to earn something that was never meant to be earned in the first place. I'm not here to tell you what to do next. I just want you to sit with what you already see. Being awake doesn't mean life suddenly gets easy. It means it gets honest. You stop hiding from your own reactions. You stop performing strength while feeling disconnected inside. You stop chasing proof that you're worthy. And in that space, something steadier takes its place. You become harder to shake, not because you're armored, but because you're grounded. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You need to be present enough to be felt. Most men will never slow down long enough to feel this. They'll keep upgrading, optimizing, polishing, wondering why something always feels missing. Not because they're weak, but because they were never taught that awareness matters more than improvement. That presence carries more weight than performance. That connection doesn't respond to effort the way achievement does. It responds to contact. And contact only happens when you're actually here. If this spoke to you, then you're not alone. There are other men quietly trying to make sense of the same things, sitting with the same questions late at night, wondering why doing everything right still feels empty. This channel exists for that space, not to hype you up, not to sell you shortcuts, just to tell the truth slowly, clearly, and without pretending the road was easy. If you want to stay in this conversation, subscribe to the channel. Not as a favor to me, but as a commitment to yourself to keep looking instead of numbing out. If something here hit close to home, leave a comment. Say what it stirred up. You never know who else needs to read your words and realize they're not broken, just disconnected. And if you know another man who's stuck, trying to be perfect instead of present, share this with him, quietly, without preaching. Just pass it along. We don't need more flawless men. We need awake ones. Men who can sit inside a moment without running from it. Men who don't beg to be loved, but allow themselves to be felt. If that's the path you're on, you're in the right place. Stay awake.